First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Midler here in the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. This is our show where we live stream every weekday starting from 1 p.m. and going all the way until 4 p.m. We cover a wide range of topics. We also get to have some great discussions about nature here in the Northwest, getting outside, and some of the science and research that goes into that, including research about threatened species and how to manage that. And there's some new technology that the Oregon Department of Forestry is utilizing that we're going to be discussing here today. Very exciting stuff. And to do so, joining us, we have Vanessa and Corey. And thank you to both of you for being here. I appreciate you being in this discussion. And to start off, if you two wouldn't mind, just to give everybody an idea here, maybe if you introduce yourselves, Vanessa first, and then Corey, and just what your roles are there at ODF, and then we'll go into some of this technology that you use.
Definitely. So hi, Greg. Thanks for the invite. So my name is Vanessa Petro, and I serve as the lead wildlife biologist for the State Forest Division here in the Oregon Department of Forestry.
Nice. And Corey?
Hey everybody, I'm Corey Grinnell. I am the Biological Support Unit Manager for Oregon State Forest. So I supervise our team of 7 wildlife biologists, and 1 is aquatics focused.
All right. And when we're talking about, the biology here in the forests of Oregon, what, to again give kind of that overview for everybody, what are the key things that you think people should know or understand about how ODF manages some of that side of things?
Sure. So for state forests, we actually manage a very small proportion of the forested land base in Oregon. We only manage about 3% of forested lands in Oregon. And most of our lands are focused up in the northwest corner of the state. So we're talking like the Tillamook and the class of state forests. So pretty small impact as far as that goes. But yeah, we're switching to these novel survey techniques and strategies.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that. We're talking about threatened species, and I guess how does the Oregon Department of Forestry currently monitor, pre this new technology, but monitor and manage those various wildlife that are part of that?
So it's mostly northern spotted owls that this gear is set up for at this point, and current survey protocols entail broadcasting owl calls in the forest. So there's a team of 50 plus biologists that we hire every summer to go out and kind of call for these species, and then they're trying to solicit a call back from the actual owls in the forest. So what this new technology does is it eliminates kind of all that labor, and it's a passive system where we put these devices out in the forest, and we're just looking for owls to call back naturally to detect where they are. And then from there, we base our management sort of on areas that they're using in the forest or not.
Interesting. So you would have somebody going out there with what, like a speaker, like just broadcasting owl calls?
Yes, and I actually have one here. I'm not sure if you can see it very well, but it's a caller. Speakers, and it broadcasts that call very loudly. It has a radius of about a quarter mile that it will kind of broadcast out to. That's kind of the effective survey radius for that. But again, it's a little more invasive in that we're soliciting a call from the species. So there's a little bit of a disturbance in the forest there versus this passive system.
So soliciting calls, and then would you hear the call or record the calls back? That gives you an idea of how many spotted owls are there or where they're located?
Not really how many, but where they're located. So it's we kind of triangulate. We call from multiple places in the forest, and we kind of triangulate if we get detections from multiple directions.
Interesting. And so you're going from having a crew of 50 ish that's hired to go out there with these speakers and then recording that back. And now with this new technology, it's going to, from what I understand, allow you to cut back on that and just really have some of these devices out there. Can you tell us about the device itself and this new technology that you're utilizing?
Yes, certainly, Greg. So the way these autonomous recording units work is essentially it's a box in terms of the equipment itself So as opposed to sending surveyors out in the woods to go to different calling stations, which is used traditionally with spotted owl surveys, with these boxes, we're attaching them to trees spread throughout areas that we deem suitable habitat for spotted owls or where they're likely to occur. And so these devices are then pre-programmed to collect all of the sounds essentially within the forest up to about 100, or not 100, but 800-foot, radius around each one of those units. And so with this pre-programmed schedule, it gives you a larger opportunity to detect these birds, as Corey said, passively. So now we're just listening to see if we can hear any spotted owl calls. And so these units are deployed for 6 total weeks during the summer, which overlaps, essentially the spotted owl's breeding season. And so unlike what we call callback surveys, as Corey described for us, with the ARUs, all of the data that they record, we then bring back in office and we process those internally. And so all of that data, essentially, the audio recordings end up being analyzed and turned into visual representations of all the calls out there, which is pretty cool. So from that, we can figure out which calls match up with those spotted owl calls, and then from there make the same inferences in terms of spotted owl use of a habitat, and then from there, what protection measures that we implement for that species in that area.
Wow, that's really cool, utilizing that data like that. So how long is one out there, one of these devices out there in the field before you bring it back in to analyze the data?
So according to the draft protocol, that is a standardized procedure that multiple agencies and organizations use for surveying. The ARUs are deployed for 6 total weeks versus the traditional callback surveys, which required, typically 6 visits during the same time period. But now you see the difference where you get 6 visits, limited time to solicit a call from a spotted owl or see one versus deploying an ARU that has a much larger window to detect the species passively.
Yeah, and it is passive without sending out those signals of its own, right?
Signals of its own.
It's not putting the call out. It's just listening for the call.
Oh, yes, you're correct. Yeah.
And how many of those are out there in the forest generally when you send them out?
So it depends. The deployment of the ARUs themselves depend on the site specifically that you're trying to survey. So what you're trying to do is set these up in an arrangement that it's covering all of the habitat you're assuming spotted owls are going to be occupying. So we know that just in the number, that's going to vary, right? Depending on the size of the site and the amount of area you're trying to cover. But not only are we using these units or this technology to detect spotted owls on the landscape, but also other federal agencies and even non-government agencies as well are deploying this new technology. So in reality, across the forest right now, there's probably several thousand ARUs deployed across Oregon's forest.
Interesting, and all being utilized for different things, whatever it is that each agency is monitoring for. Now, when you bring those in, what does that take to crunch all of that data and to analyze that many hours of audio signals?
That's a great question, Greg. A lot of computational power and some time. So what's really neat with this new approach, this passive monitoring, is that obviously these units are collecting all the sounds in the forest, right? And so when the data comes in, we have all this new software and processing capabilities where it takes all of those recordings and it kind of breaks it down into 12-second clips. And then each clip is used to generate what we call a spectrogram, which is a visual representation of the sounds in that clip. And so using artificial intelligence through a processing program, what you do is kind of similar to like using a field guide to identify a bird species based off of size and color. What AI is doing is looking through these spectrograms and trying to match up the visual representation of sound to a specific wildlife species, because every wildlife species has a certain vocalization and a series of vocalizations, and each one of those has a visual pattern that it's trying to identify. And so using that processing capability, AI can obviously go through all the files faster than we can. So it cuts down on that processing time. And then you can allow it to tell you and summarize, what were the species detected out there. And then from there, there's a validation component where we go back through the species that we want to know if they've been detected and then validate those sounds that AI is saying that those species, in this case, spotted owl, are present.
Wow, that's pretty cool. To be able to crunch, I mean, that's a lot of data. I mean, just somebody who works in a, visual and audio medium, that's a lot. So to be able to go through all that and have that filtered out. Now, I'm just curious, with all of those other sounds and vocalizations that you're getting, is there any use for the other stuff other than what you're searching for? I know you're searching for the spotted owls in there, but all those other vocalizations that you have, is that data utilized for anything?
That's a great question. So right now it's not, since our target species is going to be spotted owls in this case. But what's awesome is we have this video recording of sounds in the forest. And so we can still use the AI technology to identify what those other species were that were detected. So in the future, now that we have this recording and evidence in time, if you will, in the future, if we want to say, look at bird responses to different forage management activities, we can go back and analyze, over time, how there's different changes in bird species presence in different areas throughout a certain time interval of interest, which is really cool.
Wow. So we were doing this at this time in this area. What was the reaction? What were they sounding like? Mm-hmm. Wow, that's pretty amazing to have that. How important is it for what you all do to have these kinds of advances in technology when you're managing the forest for so many different reasons, but specifically for threatened species?
Very important. So this technology is a huge cost saver. So we spend millions of dollars hiring that army of field biologists that I mentioned, versus if we invest a little bit of money up front in this technology and get this hardware that we can use over several years and deploy in multiple locations. There's huge cost saving there, and the detectability is more reliable as well than the traditional techniques. So we're more likely to pick up species of interest with the passive methods.
What have the results been like so far?
For state forest, very preliminary. So I'm not sure if you want to talk more about that, Vanessa.
Yeah, so like Corey said, it's preliminary results, but what's great is in areas where we assume that there's going to be spotted owl use, especially when there's been, multiple years of spotted owl use, that we're finding these ARUs are detecting those birds in those same areas, especially in areas where we're also still kind of pairing to some extent these traditional callback surveys. And so we're finding that the ARUs, whenever we're detecting these birds in callback surveys, we're also detecting them adjacent to that in these ARUs, which is pretty reassuring to some extent.
That's good. I mean, at the end of the day, for the general public, what do you think is the most important thing for them to know about the use of this technology and how the forests are being managed associated with these threatened species?
I would say the important thing to note is that, as Corey was kind of alluding to, us incorporating this new technology into our survey and monitoring program is an example of us trying to use new innovative technology that offers cost savings and makes our work more efficient. And just to also note too, along with that, recognizing that this new technology also incorporates, artificial intelligence, is recognizing that there's still a human component to all of this work. So we're not putting all of our trust into the information that's collected and produced from these areas. So there's still a validation piece because we know it's not going to be 100% correct. So recognizing that we're still going through the data collecting and making sure when it says it's a spotted owl, we're verifying it is a spotted owl. And also just recognizing that we're still going to have surveyors out on the ground to some extent, but just for different purposes now. So ultimately, it's all leading to more efficient use of available staff and resources.
Nice. Well, definitely exciting. And I would imagine that there's going to be other iterations of this, going forward, or different use cases that will come out of this.
Yes, absolutely, as the technology continues to advance.
Nice. Well, thank you both, for joining us here. Anything else that you think is important for people to know?
Corey?
I'd say get out and enjoy your state forests. They're amazing places. So get out if you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Vanessa and Corey, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate this discussion and just talking about, the technology and what you're doing out there to to manage the forests and the species and the intersection of everybody all into that. And yeah, our forests are great. So at the end of the day, that's one of the most
Absolutely.
important things. Cool. Well, thank you for being here on Fox
Absolutely.
12 Now.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg.
And for everybody watching, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. Our 4 p.m. news is coming up, but we'll have a few more things here for you before then. And thanks for watching us. This is Fox 12 Now.